Hello, everyone. This is the Present Show. As we are, as usual, with Mindful Path.
Ciao, everyone.
And this time we are all at home. Even we are at home anyway, right? But this is actually the period of time where we are recording this Present Show. Maybe there will be more Present Show in this kind of periods, or maybe not. Right? Nobody knows. And today, actually, we travel to Baltimore, Maryland, with Sheri. So, Sheri, welcome to the Present Show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy because I think today we don't talk about the conventional mindfulness as we usually discuss about, right? We try to bring a different kind of topic, right? So you discuss a lot about boundaries and how to deal with other human beings around us, right? And what makes us healthier psychologically, mindfully, and so on, right? So I would like to go a little bit more into it. But before that, tell us something more about you and what you're doing and so on.
So what I'm doing is spreading the word about something I call my bubble of joy. For many people, it would be much more familiar if I call it boundaries. And I do it in a number of ways. One of which is I'm a life boundaries coach, and I help people to increase their boundaries against negativity, people, places, situations, but at the same time teaching them to push some boundaries to increase their successful life with creativity and strength and joy and love.
So how does one begin to start understanding, the concept of boundaries and my own boundaries and pushing and limiting, etc.?
Evaluating what's going on in your life that brings you joy and strength is imperative. And it doesn't have to be something you do all the time, but you're aware of what makes you happy. You're aware of what makes you comfortable, from love to cooking to work, an art that you may be involved in, what's working and what's not, and then figuring out how to filter in and out the positivity and the negativity.
So how would it work? Like if you see someone that, I don't know, is disturbing, I would say, or not, or asking you a question that you don't like, or maybe has a different opinion, how would you use and keep your bubble of joy and then, react and deal with this?
So for me, it's less of an immediate reaction to people because I like to give everyone more than one chance, as I would hope they would do for me. Let's say you're in a work environment, whether it's like we are working now, mainly online, or if it's in the presence in your work environment when you're physically there, you know that there are people who mix well with you and people who you'd rather not be around. Sometimes we have no choice. But then there are people where you have the opportunity to say, I'm going to limit my interaction. I'm not necessarily going to stop by that person's desk to say hi, because I know that person isn't a good mix. And you can decide that when you're going to interact with them, you're going to be at your best and not let their negativity get to you. It's just an awareness. You may not completely block them from your workday, but you could possibly have a choice whether or not to interact with that person. And when you have to, do it in a way that comforts you and that you are at your heightened awareness of them being a part of your workday. So let's say I'm interacting by email with somebody that I know isn't a good fit for me. I know that my responses, I may need to read them again and not react negatively. I may need to evaluate my interaction so that they're not invading my boundary. They're in their space. They behave the way that they're going to behave, but I don't let them far enough into my circle to affect and change how I behave.
At what point do we kind of control these reactions that are automatic? Because I understand, something happens, we have a reaction, but then there's, what do I do next? Sort of that response that happens later.
You could have an initial reaction with a person who doesn't fit well with your emotional level of positivity. And that first interaction, you may go off the rails. You may totally lose your focus on who you are, but that's the first time. That's your testing 1, 2, 3 on your mic. The second time you have that interaction, you have a new awareness of who it is that you're dealing with and how they may change your positivity. And you then know how much to let them in. I'm just going to read their email and not let it affect me. I'm just going to hear their voice on the phone and not let it change me. They're on their end, I'm on my end. That first time, you may not be able to do that. Sometimes midstream, like you can hear yourself on the phone changing the way that you normally speak, and you may be able to do it midstream. It may just be that you get off the phone and say, wow, I reacted poorly to that person. That's not who I am. And realize the next time I totally need to handle this differently.
How do we place the non-judgmental awareness, right, of mindfulness?
In the past, I've compared it to food allergies or a stomach sensitivity that I know if I eat ice cream, I'm fine. I love ice cream. I know if I eat pizza, I'm fine. I love pizza. I know that if I have a meal where I have pizza and then ice cream, it sets my stomach off. And I've actually tried it more than one time and realized this was not a good fit for my gastrointestinal happiness. It can be the same with people. You can try them on again and again and have empathy for whatever that person may be going through that puts them into a negative light, but you have a sensitivity to them in your life. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily a bad person. They're just not a good fit for you.
We have these judgments happening all the time, right? It's kind of like our radar, our filter. I prefer pizza. I don't prefer pizza, etc. But it's the awareness of that judgment that's key, right? It's the awareness of your gastrointestinal tract and how your body responds to it. So the awareness is there, but you're kind of observing it, right? It's like you take a step back and you evaluate, like Sheri was saying, right? How does this make me feel? How does this make me think? What's going to happen based off experience? And the tricky thing sometimes, and why, so if people understand this concept, why do they keep repeating the same thing over and over again? And why can't I become happy and I'm still stressed, etc.? It's because we're creatures of habit, right? And if you're not aware of your triggers and you're just on this autopilot all the time, then it becomes trickier.
I'd also like to ask, if you're not the person who's evaluating for yourself and deciding what is appropriate for you, who will help? Who will do that for you? I understand the concept of being non-judgmental, and I definitely am. I am one of the most open people you'll ever meet. But at the same time, if you are not your own cheerleader, if you're not the captain of your team, Team Sheri, who is going to do that for me? Who is going to protect me from harm except for me?
What about nowadays, right? With technology, how does this, connecting virtually and boundaries by the government and distance between people, how does this change the dynamics of setting up boundaries?
It's an amazing new world that we've just jumped into. For some people, this has been the norm for a long time, communicating, learning, praying on so many different levels with technology. And people are exploring worlds of all of those venues on these type of platforms together, may have never before, and finding ways to make it truly personal. I had a department meeting this morning where we just chatted for a moment about what we're watching on TV, joking about what some people are doing with their kids, and trying not to focus on some of the sadness of missing those personal times. I work in an extraordinary organization where I'd say 99% of the people are just uplifting humans, and we miss each other so much. Mm. So finding ways to make these platforms more personal is a challenge that I see people excelling at.
Your relationship with mindfulness, right? In this, if if you're practicing, or what you think about it, or so on.
So I've been practicing mindfulness, believe it or not, since I was 7. Mm-hmm. I was a student in a karate dojo in Brooklyn, New York. Mm-hmm. And I remember during one of my first classes, I was asked to sit cross-legged on the floor and close my eyes and clear my mind. And at the very moment the instructor said, clear your mind, a pink, fluffy, animated elephant danced across my field of view in my mind. And I thought, clear my mind, this elephant will not go away. And to this very day, that elephant brings me joy when I go to meditate. I'm not a clear your mind type of person. I may put something in your mind that brings you comfort and joy, and focus on that thing. So whether it's something you can touch, I have beautiful polished rocks at my desk at work that I realize I would really like to go pick up. I love scented candles. I love mindfulness art. I take part in a practice called Zentangle. Different methods of bringing yourself joy for me is not necessarily clearing, but resetting what I'm seeing in my mind's eye. So surrounding yourself with joyous people for me is imperative. And I started a group called Standing Up for Women. Mm-hmm. No politics, no drama, just joy. So right now it's about 1,600 women, and it's a little over a year old. Mm-hmm. And it's truly a place on social media with a sense of safety that I've never experienced before. It was my goal to create a joyous and uplifting place for women where women didn't have to be worried about judgment, about negativity. Some of the things that sadly women can experience in other social media venues, it just does not happen in this private group. And I'm so pleased with what it's become. Each day I post a social moment at 1:15, a simple moment, simple topic, a way to connect. But it goes from serious to silly. Last night we had a karaoke party. Just things to bring us closer and have some joy.
Thank you for sharing, Sheri, and thank you for also to bring in this. For me, it's quite interesting as the concept of thinking about boundaries, but not on division perspective, but more of an awareness side. It's and it brings you perhaps even more opportunity to focus on that awareness, right? Focus on that way we are judging, and eventually it can even put together people that initially might think they are not fit for each other, right? So that's
always that opportunity to refresh a relationship that may not have worked at one point, and all of a sudden you realize it works.